And he simply cannot believe what he sees. He's looking, because he just, this is the most amazing thing in the world to him. He sees a whole batch of puppies. And puppies, okay, wait, everybody in unison together. 1, 2, 3. Nicely done. He loves puppies, this guy. This little guy is his favorite thing in the whole world. And so he's just sitting there staring. He cannot take his eyes off of these puppies. And so the owner of the house happens to see him out there and comes out and chats with him a little bit. And the owner of the house can see how much the little guy loves the puppies. And he's like, hey, what do you think? Do you want to come in and play with these guys for a while? And the little guy's like, really? He says, yeah, come on, you can come in and play. So he goes in there and he's just having a blast, right? He's in there, he's wrestling these puppies and they're tackling him and they're licking him to death, and he is in heaven. So when the owner of the house is just so moved by all this, he goes up to the young guy and he says, hey little buddy, what would you think if I phoned your parents and asked if you could take one of these little guys home? And the little guy's like, yes! Because of course he's wanting nothing. He's wanted nothing more than to have a puppy. And the owner says, okay, well I tell you what, if I do this for you, first of all you got to tell me which one you want. And immediately the little guy's like, that one right there. So owner goes over and grabs the puppy and he says, you mean this one, are you sure? The little guy's like, yeah. The owner says, well you see, you need to, this little guy's got kind of a gimped hind leg. And you need to know, my little friend, that if you take this puppy home, first of all, he's not going to be able to run and play like the other puppies. Second of all, he's going to be, he's going to be at the vet a lot, he's going to be away from you, it's going to be expensive for your parents. And thirdly, my little friend, this little guy is just not going to live as long as the other ones. So tell me then, why do you want this little guy? And all of a sudden, his face grew very serious. And he reached down and he pulled up his pant leg to reveal a brace on his leg. You see, this little guy he's had a neurological disorder in his leg since birth. The doctors haven't been able to figure it out. So essentially, he's kind of gimped, just like the puppy. He looks up at the owner with all the sincerity he has and he says, I want this one because he needs someone. He needs someone who understands him. You see, my friends, that is the essence of mercy and compassion. That is the essence of what God does for us. And that is the essence of what we as Catholic Christians are called to do for others. To be there for people, especially in their most lonely and difficult moments when they are crippled, and help them to move forward and help them to live. That is what mercy is. And I believe each and every one of us could use a little mercy now. He wants us to understand it on a deeper level, but more importantly, he wants us to live it. He wants us to understand God's mercy towards us and how we share it with each other. So I would just like to take a few minutes to share the story of how mercy first touched my life. I want to start off by saying I grew up 2 hours. I'm from Saskatchewan. I grew up 2 hours from here in Estevan. I would also like to start by saying that even though I live in Alberta, I am a die-hard Rough Riders fan. And thank you. And I want to say that whenever the Riders are not in the Grey Cup, then it's ABC for me. Anything but Calgary, right? And I have to say that I took some very serious pleasure in watching the Calgary Stampeders totally implode in the last two. Is that bad? Sorry, I really, and I am, and you can be assured, I am the voice of the green and white in southern Alberta for the Riders. So I grew up in Estevan. When I was a little guy, everything went quite well. I did good in school. I got good grades in school. I played hockey in the winter, golf in the summer, and I even had lots of friends. Even went to church with mom and dad once in a while. When I became a teenager, when I got into my teenagers, that's when things just started to go sideways. I started to seriously abuse drugs and alcohol. I was getting in trouble with the law constantly. Police were showing up at my door way too often and fighting with my family, with my parents, all of the time. And actually in grade 11, I decided to quit school. Quit school halfway through grade 11 and decided to take up full-time partying. And one night my friends and I, we were out partying and we all took some acid, or more commonly known as LSD. We stayed out for a couple hours and went home. And then when I went home and went to sleep, I had this kind of strange experience, which I still find hard to explain, but I'm going to do my best to explain it to you here now. I was lying in bed, and all of a sudden I just became incredibly restless, agitated, and this feeling just continued to intensify as I was lying there. And it intensified to the point that it became frightening, terrifying. It was just like some black, dark kind of presence, I'm not sure what, sort of pressing in all around me. Whatever it was terrifying. And I got to the point where I was just like, I felt like I was going to scream. And all of a sudden, in the midst of that terror, I remembered a prayer. I hadn't prayed anything for a long time. I had long since left Catholic school behind, but I hadn't prayed anything for a while. But there it was, you know what? And it was the Our Father. In the midst of this horrific experience, the Our Father comes into my mind, and I start praying this, and by the time I reached the end, whatever that was just gone. So I rolled over, went to sleep, and kind of, went on my way the next morning and didn't think too much about it. But looking back, I can see now that was the beginning of God starting to knock on my door. I went on my way. I continued being the rebel party animal, but my problems continued to pile up, and in particular, my legal problems were piling up. Because I was getting all of these fines, impaired driving, possession of marijuana, the list goes on and on and on. And at the time, I didn't believe in work. And there came a point where my parents stopped bailing me out, so I was in quite the predicament. I had all of these bills to pay and no cash to pay for it. So what the courts did was they made me do volunteer hours, work volunteer hours to pay for my fines. And they sent me to a place in Estevan called the Work-In Shop, which is a place that supports people with mental and physical disabilities. And now this was a pretty amazing experience when I went there, because you see, the other people that worked there were exceptional. They were exceptional in the way they treated the people with physical and mental disabilities. They treated them with just such incredible kindness and compassion, and they were just so natural and kind of fun with them, just like they would be with you and me. And to me, this is just totally got my attention, because you see, when I was an ignorant, arrogant teenager party animal, myself and my friends, used to make fun of the retards, right? That's a terrible word, that's what we used to call them. It's the worst word in the world, but that's the way we were. And so here's these people, just the total opposite. They treat them just like they would anybody else, and I was like, wow, that is different. And again, you see, all this made me think about my life, made me think about my choices. And I began to realize I started to realize that, maybe some of my choices weren't the best. And again, it was kind of like God was starting to knock on my door. Not long after that, my father became sick. became very ill. He had to quit work and ended up in the hospital. One day my mom and I were there at the hospital visiting my father, and all of a sudden, from his hospital bed, he was weak, he couldn't get up at this point, and he asked me, he said, Harley, he said, come here for a second. So I walked over to the side of his hospital bed, and he looked up at me and he said, Harley, give me a hug. And you know what, my father, up until I was like 17 at that point, and my father had never hugged me. So, but I bent over and I wrapped my arms around him and gave him a hug, and as I was hugging him, he whispered in my ear and he said, Har, take care of Mom for me. And you see, even then I didn't get it. I was just too oblivious still at the time. I didn't fully understand what he was saying. But I know now that he was telling me that he was dying. He had cancer. For whatever reason, nobody had kind of decided to let me in on this information. I don't know why, but he was dying. And what he was telling me was, he was trying to let me know that he wasn't going to be around and that I was going to have to be the man of the house and step up and take care of things. And it was just a couple short weeks later that he died of cancer. And although it was such an incredibly sad day, the day that he died was such an amazing miracle. Just shocking again. Let me set the stage for you. You see, I don't know if you've ever seen someone who is in the final stages of cancer, but usually the pain is right off the charts, so they've given them medication, morphine. So for my father, anyway, on his very last day, he was in bed and just delirious, thrashing, moaning. It was an awful, awful scene. And we would try and communicate with him. We'd try and nudge him and speak in his ear to try and settle him down or do something, and it was no good. But there was nothing. He was just like it was like he was completely gone and delirious. And so, but my mother, who was a good Catholic, decided that she called the priest and had him come and give the sacrament of last rites. He came into our room, talked with us briefly, and then he went over to my dad's bedside, and all he did was he just reached down and grabbed Dad's hand. And all of a sudden, my father woke up. Just all of a sudden, 30 seconds before Father Ken walked in the room, he was still just thrashing and moaning, and then all of a sudden when Father Ken took his hand, he completely settled right down, and all of a sudden opened up his eyes and was able to talk and pray for a short time with Father Ken. And then after that, it was just a short time after that he passed away peacefully. So I believe mercy, my father experienced mercy right at the very 11th hour of his life. Experienced great mercy and met his Maker. Made peace with God at the very, very end of his life. But for me in that experience, I'm sitting on the other side of the room, and my jaw is on the floor because I'm pretty convinced that I have just seen a real, live God miracle. I don't know how else I could explain that. In 1 second, my father's thrashing just about right out of the bed. The next second, he's peaceful and still at the touch of the priest's hand. So in my head, my mind is just going 1,000 miles an hour. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, was that God? Was that just a miracle that I saw? Is God real? Is this real? What does this mean for me? And of course, my life, I was really beginning to realize at that point that my life was just going off the rails and I was making bad choices. I could begin to see the consequences of all my behavior, and I was really beginning to sense that I needed something new and different. So in the midst of all that, I began to think, wow, I wonder what would happen if I went back to church. And so I did. I actually started going to Mass once in a while. And the one Saturday evening I was in Mass, and right at the end of Mass, this young lady got up and she started talking about this retreat weekend, search weekend for Catholic young people. And, she was talking about how this is a weekend for people, where if you've got questions about your faith and want to know about God and want to meet other people who are kind of are in the faith, and so you can come on the weekend. And I was like, yeah, check, that's me. And I also have to confess to you, this young lady who got up, she was just smoking hot as well. So, you see, she had my attention on a couple different levels, but, God works in mysterious ways, right? So, long story short, I went on this weekend, and that was a game changer, my friends. Oh my goodness, I met all these other amazing Catholic, Christian, young people. They were so alive, they were so on fire, and they were just like, they were kind and considerate. They were so different than the friends that I had been partying with. And I began to see that it was their faith that made them who they were. And I began to understand the Bible story. All of a sudden, I got it. The story about how Jesus came, gave his life for us, and died on the cross for the forgiveness of our sins so that we could be forgiven and have a brand new start. So I made the decision. That was over 30 years ago, my friends. I made that decision to become a follower of Christ. I haven't looked back, and it is by far and wide the best decision that I have ever made. Becoming a Christian doesn't take away all the problems, but it helps life to make sense. In my faith, now there's a couple things that are the most amazing. I can say I know who I am, and I know what I'm supposed to do. And that, my friends, is the most amazing feeling in the world. Life is not easy now, but it's a strength. It's an inner strength that gets me through the difficult times. So you know what? And there is some amazing, exciting things going on with young people these days that I see, because I do a lot of these, and I meet with a lot of young people and talk with them. And you know what I'm really inspired by? I'm just so inspired by the fact that there are so many more young people who really care. I'm meeting all kinds of young people now who are sort of more conscious of the fact that there's a lot of injustices in the world and that they want to do something about it, that they want to stand up and make a difference. They can see it, they talk about it, and they've got some, a little bit crazy sometimes, but some fresh ideas and energy on how they want to make a difference in the world. And I see some of these young people, now there's just some really exciting things going on. I see a lot of these young people all of a sudden, just like me, they're kind of taking a new interest in the church. Because despite its faults, if you want to make a difference, the Catholic Church is a great place to be involved if you want to get in and really kind of make a difference and kind of help people, especially people who've been kicked to the curb. And at the other end of the spectrum. I see the Catholic Church now kind of really wanting to do more to welcome young people like yourself. I don't know if you're aware, but there's going to be a big, Pope Francis is having a really big meeting this fall, and the meeting is specifically about you. He's getting all of the cardinals, all the bishops from around the world, and he is talking, the meeting is going to be entirely about young people. How do we better understand our young people? How do we help them to get involved in the church? So this is, to me, I can see the two sides coming together, right? I can see all these young people who are getting more excited about making a difference and getting involved in the church, and I can see the church itself beginning to be more welcoming. So there are great things happening for you in your presence, in your midst. There's great opportunities, and we need your energy. We need your ideas. We need your creativity. We need your talent and all your love and energy. So won't you come? Join me. Come with me. Get excited. Go in, turn the world upside down for the faith, and together we will make a difference. Thank you.